Hello guys, this is Laurel with Laurel's Designs. Welcome to my craft room. We're going to be making today a swag, a simple teardrop swag for everyday, to use every day. And we're going to be adding some mesh. So the first step will be to fluff your evergreen form for your swag. This video it's going to be an overhead view of me designing this during my TikTok live. So you can always go to my swag playlist area and you can find a more detailed view of how I do my teardrop swags. So I'm going to be adding some videos about that. The mesh, as you see me here cutting it, I'm cutting it at 22 inches. This is the jute with snow flocked or snow drifted jute mesh from the Hobby Lobby. So you can find it at your local craft store. So we're gonna be, I normally do not count my mesh. I just go and make it as full as I want. So I'm just cutting away. One thing that helps me is cut at least 7 pieces, 6 or 7 pieces first, and start adding them to your swag or your wreath. And then from there, you decide if you need to add more or if you're good with the amount that you cut. That helps me not overcut my mesh and having just pieces laying around of specific measurements. The way I work my wreath, it depends on what I want to do and what kind of style I want to do on my wreath. It's depending on how long I cut my mesh. Some of my mesh I cut them at 18 inches. Some I cut it at 20. Some are cutting at 22. Some I cut at 30. It depends if I'm just adding fullness, if I want to add colors, how many different color of mesh I'm adding. It all depends. So for this one, I'm only using one color, one style of mesh. And so far, I made 7 cuts. So we'll see how long and if we need to add any more. The method that I'm using to put my mesh is just you put your mesh upside down with the curls facing you. You're gonna roll one edge about 2 or 3 times, small rolls. You're gonna walk and gather your mesh right in the center to the other end that you cut, and then roll that other end again. I also have a video of how to roll your mesh in different ways that I'm going to be adding for easier view of that. Okay. So as you guys can see, the 7th cut of mesh that I did, it almost gave me like 3/4 of the size of my swag. So I'm going to be cutting probably 3 more cuts of mesh of 22 inches and adding them slowly again to the rest of the swag. Again, as you can see, I make the curl to facing me and then walk it and then make the curl on the other side. So that method I believe is called a cruffle. And that's how I attach it. I use the same evergreen wires to attach my mesh to the teardrop swag. So I had to cut one additional mesh, so I ended up using 11 strips of 22 inches of mesh for these 24-inch teardrop swag. I always add to the back of my wreath and my swags wire so my clients can hang it with ease on their door or on the wall, wherever they decide to hang it. So I create a little hoop on the back with wire. You can use twine, you can use a pipe cleaner, whatever you have available, it's what you can use, okay? So now I'm going to be selecting the ribbons that I'm going to be adding for our bows. On this swag, we are going to use one sign, which is a rectangular sign. It's made out of wood and it has a beautiful saying in the front. It says home sweet home and it has some magnolias. I'll show it to you in a minute. The sign is going to be right in the middle, and then we're going to be adding 2 bows, one on the top and one on the bottom. And then we're going to be adding some florals to it. So I went and made the selections for my ribbons. I used two different types of ribbons that are 2.5 inches. One is a stripes with the same khaki tones and white striped cabana kind of style of ribbon. And the other one is a floral magnolia flower ribbon. Those are 2.5 inches wide. And then I'm using 2 1.5-inch ribbon. One is an embossed green, which is a beautiful ribbon. And then the other one is a solid white, I believe I use. So the first step will be to add the 2 pipe cleaners to the back of the wooden sign. The way I do that is, since the sign is not too thick, it's also 1/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna use my staple gun, I put 2 dabs of glue on the back of the sign and place my pipe cleaners on that dab of glue. I let that dry, And that will serve as kind of a pillow for my staples not to go through the entire wood piece of the sign. Okay, so I let it dry. I let dry that hot glue to kind of give me that cushion on it. In the meantime, we're going to be starting creating and designing the ribbons and dovetailing some of them so we can use it. Now, once that glue dries, then I am going to be stapling those two pipe cleaners to the back of the sign and placing the sign on my swag. As you can see, I picked magnolias and magnolia leaves using the same style of flowers and colorings that I have on my sign. Once I have stapled those two pipe cleaners to the back of my sign, I proceed to put the sign in the place that I want the sign. In this case, it's going to be about the center of the swag. And I'm going to be running those pipe cleaners through the center of my swag form and attaching them to the back. Here I show you how I turn it upside down and make sure that those two pipe cleaners are attached and secure to each other and to my form so it doesn't move around. I refluff my mesh, making sure that it's not covering any part of my sign, and remove any threads or any tiny piece of material that is not supposed to be there, okay? As you guys know, I like to do my bows by hand. I don't measure too much, but I do have videos of different types of bows here on my YouTube channel that you can watch, and you will be able to learn how to do hand bows with ease. So this is just a combination. This bow is going to be just a combination of four different ribbons, three or four different ribbons, and it is honestly a simple bow. It is just measure 6 inches of tail, gather and twist at your 6 inches mark, twist your ribbon to have the ugly side up, and gather and make a loop, and again gather and pinch on the center and twist again, and then make the other loop. I do have a video for these type of bow over here on my YouTube channel, and the playlist is called bow making, so you will be able to find this bow here, and you can make variations of it, like making the tails longer, making the loops shorter. Honestly, it's a very simple bow to do, okay? So here I'm adding the second type of ribbon, which is our floral ribbon. It has magnolias on it. It's a beautiful, beautiful ribbon. And I'm going to be doing the exact same bow again. Pinch and gather, twisting every time I'm going to make a loop. And just going about making the second bow exactly the same way, and just putting it one on top of the other, okay? The process is going to be exactly the same thing, exactly the same process as in the video with the bows. In these particular bows, I'm gonna be leaving some of the tails longer, maybe about 24 inches long, so I can make kind of a waterfall right next to the sign, to give some and add some interest to our swag. So now we're going to be making the two smaller bows. They're going to be a tad shorter than the other two bows that we have done. And these ones are going to be made with the 1.5 inch ribbon. Again, this is just to add in texture and different colors. This is just a neutral shade of khaki with some polka dots, and it's just a beautiful ribbon. And then on top of that one, we're going to be adding our 1.5 inch green embossed ribbon, which adds a ton of color to our bow. Some of our bows are going to have long tails. Others, the ones on top especially, are going to have a shorter tails. So we don't have to run all of the ribbons down in the cascade that we're going to be making, okay? Okay, so now that we have the bow with all the four different types of ribbons, we need to tie it together and put it all together with a zip tie, okay? So once I fluff my ribbon, once I fluff my bows, I go with a zip tie and I attach it to, and then make sure that I don't tie that zip tie completely, so I don't make it completely tight in the back, so I can run a pipe cleaner through it. Now remember, I might be a little bit out of focus here for your guys' view, but I am recording this as I am doing a live over on TikTok. And the same thing that I'm doing here, I'm teaching during my live, and explaining my viewers how I am doing it. So that's why I am showing them the bow. But if you go again to my videos here and my playlist that is called bow making, you will be able to see me doing that type of bow and explaining you how to do that bow exactly. Once I have that pipe cleaner on the back, I can attach it to my swag. I find the placement where I want it and just move my swag back onto my table and attach my bow right on top of it, running those pipe cleaners again through all that mesh and all the way to the back of my form, so I can wrap it around and attach it so it cannot be removed. Okay, you can do this with pipe cleaner, you can do this with a zip tie. Now remember, if you're going to use a zip tie, please don't tie that zip tie too tight, because that's going to change the form of your bow. Okay, if you tie it too tight, you're going to be straining that bow and pulling that bow in through that mesh, and it's going to look it's not going to have the shape that you want the bow to have. Okay, so just be careful. That's why I prefer to use the pipe cleaners to hold my bows into my forms. Now I'm going to be designing how long or how short I'm going to be cutting the tails of my bows so it doesn't cover my sign. Okay, So as you can see, I decided to cut short both of the 1.5 and one of the 2.5 inches, which was the Magnolia one. I also decided to cut it a little shorter, and I left only one of the ribbon, making a waterfall or cascading down the side of my swag. And then I, of course, proceed to cut and dovetail that other end of the cabana ribbon. So now it comes the fun part, which for me is adding the florals. I'm going to be adding and cutting the florals to the top. And then we're going to be working on the bottom of the swag. So I'm going to be using these beautiful magnolias, white magnolias, and the beautiful magnolias real feel leaves. You want to make sure that you get good florals when you're doing your wreaths. It is very important. They look different when you buy very inexpensive flowers versus when you buy good quality flowers. So these, since is an evergreen form or base, it allows me to put a lot more flowers and glue it down, and it would stay in place. Sometimes when we're working with regular wire forms and just mesh, sometimes it's hard for us to put a lot of florals on it because we'll only be attaching it to the mesh. And it won't glue the same way, but since I'm using an evergreen form, it is very, very easy to glue them down and to attach the florals to our form and to our wreath. Now, always remember when you're placing flowers, like in nature, flowers have different positions and they have movement, right? So you need to try to imitate nature on the wreath. Don't put all the flowers looking to the same side or having the same movement. All of the flowers, if you go outside to your backyard or your front yard, or if you go to a garden, and I always recommend my students to do that. Go to gardens, go to nurseries, and take a look at how flowers react, how they move, how they position themselves. Some plants and flowers are only meant to be hanging, or they meant to be trailing on a trellis, or they're vines. So you need to make sure that whatever you're using, you're giving it the right form. Is just part of forestry. Okay, so make sure that you take the time to learn about florals when you are working with them. And always make sure that you balance your design. It doesn't have to be symmetrical, like both sides doesn't have to be the same, but you want to have balance. That's the main goal, to achieve a balance and a harmony on that piece that you're creating. So now we're going to be making the same bow but a little bit smaller for the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to be putting the same bows, same ribbons, um, on the opposite side on the bottom, and then again that will create a balance on my teardrop swag. It's gonna be with the same 4 ribbons, the same basic bow design. I love to make that bow. It is very simple, but it's very, very pretty. I believe in this case, I decide to go with short tails on the bottom, so it doesn't hang too much, but it will add all of those colors and the fullness that I'm looking for. Once I add both of the 2.5-inch bows, then I proceed with the 1.5-inch polka dot and the embossed green. Once again, once we have our bow already done, then we come with a zip tie and we run it through all the ribbons like you saw me doing it there. Zip tied on the back, not too tight, so we can always leave some space for our pipe cleaner to be run on the back of that bow so we can attach it to our wreath. See, that was a better view there. I hope you guys can see it. But anyway, if you didn't catch that, you can always go to my bow making playlist and take a look at those videos where I'm making some bows, and you'll find that simple bow that I'm making with multiple layers. Okay, so now we're attaching that bow to the bottom part of our teardrop swag. Again, making sure that we're running it all the way to the back and attaching it to our form. The next step, The next step will be fluffing that bow and making sure that all our ribbons are in the place that I want them to be, that they're all visible, that I'm not covering anything. And now, of course, adding the florals to the bottom part. I'm going to be adding more magnolias to the bottom and more magnolia leaves. Now, as you guys going to be able to see there, I am creating two imaginary diagonal lines. One of them goes from the top right to the bottom left with the bows, and the other one goes from the top left to the bottom right with the magnolias. That creates a sense of fullness, and it just makes the design more cohesive. Okay, so it has fluidity because you're adding the magnolias on the top and then more magnolias on the bottom, but they have a specific placement. Okay, then of course you have to remember that magnolias are not only your flowers but the leaves in the magnolia tree are simply stunning, with that double tone, with the back of the leaf being more fussy brown and the very pretty green and shiny green on the front. Of course, you want to make sure that behind your bow you also have something interesting, like adding some leaves or putting that magnolia bud that I just put there on the bottom. It creates some interest and it doesn't look like you're not adding anything behind that bow. I like to make my wreath as full as possible, without being overwhelming and taking away from whatever is my focal point. In this case, my focal points are two. They are my sign and my magnolias. Okay, I'm gonna continue adding magnolias to the top right now behind our bow, trying to give it that feeling that the magnolias are spreading around the swag. Okay, so now I'm gonna be adding some more texture. You wanna make sure that you have that you be adding some interest to that piece. And one of the greeneries that I love using the most is beaded grass. You can cut it as much as you want. It's a pusher. I normally don't use the whole clipping on it. I normally use only 2 or 3 of the beaded grasses. Out of 1 liter stem, I take many out, so it lasts me a long time. So that's what I'm doing there. I kind of trimming that cut or that stem out so I can have multiples. And I just add it in strategic places just to add interest and texture to my wreath. So I continue adding beaded grass to different parts of it. Okay guys, so remember, you're gonna keep adding your texture greenery until you feel like there's plenty of it, there's enough of it. You don't want to be too overwhelming, and you need to, if you're doing this to sell them, you want to make sure that you keep in mind your budget. So this was where I stopped. I added what I thought it was enough, and I was happy with the design. You always need to step back and look at it, and see how you like it. And I think this was the time to stop, so I'm cleaning out. I hope this video was helpful and that you guys enjoyed it. Again, the bows videos are in the playlist that is called bow making, and there's a lot more designs that are going to be coming for swag making in more detail. This was just an overhead that I recorded, and I thought you guys will enjoy it. Okay, we'll see you next time, and thank you for stopping on my YouTube. Bye.